And we also hear that they do a kind of unspeakable act, and I don't know if you can confirm this, ICC, that they capture the acid souls when they die on Earth, and then they rebody them for further use in space. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that for the ICC standpoint. I do know that the Dark Draco factions were doing that, illegally, of course, because if they don't own any DNA contracts down here or soul contracts, then they don't have the right. Nobody has the right to collect souls except for like reapers and that sort of stuff. So for the reincarnation cycles and whatnot. The only time that anyone can collect a soul without going through the reincarnation cycle is by a soul contract. If your soul, I guess if you have like a star family or something and you're like, hey, when I die, my soul needs to come back to you guys, you sign it before you get here. You know, there's a lot of illegal technology that has been used on Earth, and Earth has been looked at for the last 4 or 5 years by the higher councils that are governing the, you know, bigger councils of this universe, because there are things going on here that were never supposed to happen. And even though this is a starseed experimental planet, there are still rules that the governing seed councils who started the project have to go by source. So,
and let's see, Apollymi, I think you briefly glossed about this at one point, but didn't go into detail, that you actually met your mother in the SSP, at least an altar of hers. And is that true? And how did you react?
So it would be the human genetic, if you could call it a mother, basically my handler. And I hadn't seen her in over since 2010. And so this was 2000, and between 2016 to 2015. And I ended up getting abducted, and I was in one of the SSP missions, and we ended up fighting on one of these space stations. Excuse me. And I ended up getting rendered incapacitated because we were getting really hard pressed. We were fighting pretty hard, and I got picked up, and I thought at first it was my faction, but it ended up being the enemy faction, and it ended up being the Nazi Aryans. And they took me into their ship because apparently we were fighting them in one of their base areas on the ship. And all I remember is them taking me to a safe location in the ship, and I was literally, I could not move. I was strapped to a table, and I literally just like could turn my head, and I saw these huge bodies, millions upon millions of dead bodies in this storage area. And then they ended up like grabbing them on meat hooks and ended up taking me to the facility. Anyway, I ended up getting body transferred for the first time of my conscious memory. And it was very painful. They hooked me up to all these weird machines and put the body like right over me and hooked the wires up and everything to the body and ripped my soul and consciousness from the body I was in to that body, which was male. And they ended up wheeling me out and throwing me on the floor. And then I was trying to figure out where I was, what had happened, it was very painful. Like the DNA, they put me in a human body, which does not do very well for me because my quanta is too big, and it literally is like radioactive poison to human bodies. And so I'm breaking this body down while I'm trying to like re-amalgamate the genetics, and I'm getting like its memories and how it died and its family and stuff. Well, this lady walks over, and she's dressed in the Nazi Aryan outfit, very dark brown with the red stripes going down. She's got the Star Force emblem, the original one where it has the Orion constellation behind it. She's got the Nazi patch on it, and she was standing next to two males, and then there's another male in front of me. And I look over and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And she calls me by the name that, calls me by my name. And I just stop and stare at her. And when you're in SSP and you deal with ETs and everything, they train you to forget what the body looks like, and they train you to understand and familiarize what the consciousness feels like. So soul signature, basically. And the soul signature of this lady was just a tiny, minute phase off, but there was enough there to know that this was more of a whole than a shard of the one that was on Earth. The one that was on Earth was apparently a shard of her. And I have extreme disassociation feelings for this lady. So, because she was my handler and I didn't get treated very well, but I didn't even know what to think. It was confusing. I didn't understand body swapping at the time. All the avatars that I had been in up to that point were clones, or like other ET bodies. I didn't understand that you could have two of you in one location at the same time by taking a shard out. That technology was not known to me yet. So it was interesting and terrifying all at the same time.
Yeah, and I heard that you can sometimes get to control your own shards remotely, and it involves you overcoming their own willpower. And I think that's suggestive of the fact that they have their own native like soul, and the way that these programs operate is that they overlay your soul or shard to their native soul. And how did you manage to control them, and do they ever control you?
So the way that you'd have to understand the way that consciousness exists first and the way that it works. This is all Hanovian quantum physics understanding. That it's not so much the program overlay, it's you. They can take a shard out of your body by duplicating your chakras. And they take that chakra shard out and put it into a clone of you. And when a clone is made, it has a different soul in it, so you have to overtake that soul. But because that soul is not meant for that body, again, me being in a human body, the genetics the quanta wasn't compatible with the genetics. And so there's no synchronicity there. It will actually break down. You'll get health issues very quickly. So they try to shove a soul that's not made for that body in that body, and which makes it easier to overrun and control if you are the prime. And it's basically all about willpower, because they have my energy in them, and I have learned to manipulate my energy well enough, even at a long distance, because of the implant technology and the avatar technology. I literally learned to just go into every fiber of that being and basically cut them off from that body, and then just be able to take control of them. I can just link my consciousness to it, and I'll get sometimes audio, video, like it's like kind of like watching a movie. Sometimes I can take over their body to do what I want. It's only for short periods of time, but it's enough to do some destruction. I can feel what they're feeling, smell what they're feeling. I can feel the area around them if I get in tuned enough, so I know their coordinates, their location, that sort of thing.
And Planetary Corp had the ability to take a whole soul out of its body, put it in an electrical magnetic stasis field container, and put another soul into that body, so you were one soul controlling the body. And once you were done, they could take your soul out and put that original soul in the container field back into its body. So they figured out how to totally take a soul out where you didn't even need a soul fragment shard. So it's interesting how this has progressed. Soul swapping is very real. Yeah. And there's just entities some beings are so powerful, they could commandeer your body and you're stuck consciousness next to their soul while they're operating your body. You're helpless watching what they do. You're still stuck in the body. So it's not just soul swapping technology. Some beings can do this physically with their abilities. There's a lot of variation where soul fragments are used, altars are used, or the whole soul is used. So, and walk-ins, like there's illegal walk-ins walking about because some beings interfere and come in where they shouldn't without free will choice.
Yeah, we call those possessions.
Not
Not all possessions have to be violent and,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, possession for me, I've seen possession where the person is just trapped in a kind of an energy prison and other beings are controlling their body, like what's happening in Europe to a certain person that was done to them. So it really is so many variations on this that can happen.
It's really crazy when we go on missions. They could literally take us up into space like tonight, and having all of our abilities activated, it's like we're water, you know, we have everything available to us. But when we come down here, it's like we're solid as a rock, and you have less physics to work with, and it's very frustrating because you know you can do more than this. And when you're so used to having your abilities all the time and you come down here, or even your form, it's frustrating because you're literally put into something where it's like losing your eyesight and your hearing or your sense of touch or taste. They're actual real senses for us that we use every day.
Exactly, yeah. So you're somewhat restricted in 3D physicality, but when you're out in space and if you're on a higher dimensional system, planet, your abilities are activated. And it's like, it's just a muting of energy field. When you're out of the 3D body, that stuff leaves. The restrictions leave naturally, and sometimes with genetic modification.
Yeah. And so it's definitely living two different lives at the same time. It's kind of frustrating sometimes.
And with quantum time leap technology, you can actually be living parallel lifetimes because your soul can be split apart and put in different bodies and different personalities.
No, I call it sharding, like, because I think of crystals, and each crystal has like a personality that is part of you. It's like your subconscious being put into those type of situations. And that also goes with cloning as well, if they put you in a clone or a different body. Is that the same referencing, or I know people have different terminologies?
The soul capture technology, where they can take your soul out of your body and put it in an electrical magnetic container field, and then put that soul in a clone body or a genetically, synthetically grown avatar body, or they can just snatch your soul and put it in a different human body altogether that they have in a stasis pod. And then you're like suddenly in being from a female body to a male body or a cyborg body. For that instance, then you're like, oh, I'm female, but now I'm in a male body, and I'm like, okay, I'm bigger, have different genitals. So you're like, okay, I move a little different. I'm bulkier. So you have to adjust into the body. Like, it might take a few days because you're in a different body. Your soul is you, but you're in a different body. So you have to like adjust to the factors of the body, how you're walking, how you're talking, how you're behaving. And sometimes there's residual memories in that body of the previous soul that was in it. And you have to contend with that, because their soul is being held in an electrical container system. And at one point, it will be returned back to their body, and your soul goes back to your body. But in the meantime, you have some cellular memory of that person's memories and experiences. And you can tap into them and utilize them. If they had any gifts or abilities, you can tap into that through those memories and work with it in that body.
That has to deal with the piezoelectric properties of DNA as well. But it
Yes.
literally, it's like crystals. It retains memory.
Yes, it does. Oh, it so does. And you can tap into it and work with it. And it's like you're accessing their memories, their abilities, their gifts, who they are as a soul. You can't be them. You can't remain them forever, but temporarily you can tap into that and use it for your missions, for whatever you need to do, why you're in that body in the first place.
Yeah. And so if a soul that does not belong into that body stays in that body for a long period of time, and that your soul's energy doesn't quite mix with the physical body that you're residing in, it will break down.
It won't necessarily break down. It just might be uncomfortable because you're not in your own body. But they make sure that some portion of your genetics does end up in that body. So it works with your soul frequency, just a smidge of your genetics, just to make that body work temporarily. They can add in the genetics, but it's temporary. Then the genetics dissolves out of that body when the original soul goes back into its original body, and my soul goes back into my body when they do the switch up. That DNA dissolves. It's temporary.
How about this question? Tell us about, do some of these ETs, is that one of the things they trade? Meat? Human?
Yes, there is quite a few species out in the universe who eat meat, and human is on the menu. I hate to say it, guys. I'm sorry. You're still not the top of the food chain. No one is. And unfortunately, humans breed a lot and a lot quicker, especially on Earth. So obviously, some of the dark Dracos obviously eat human. There are some like hybrid gray ET species that also eat human, and just like anything else, human can be on the menu anywhere in space, so you always want to know where your meat's coming from. I've actually been to several planets that actually have restaurants and stuff like that, and they also serve human as well.
Wow. Did they serve meat?
Yeah, absolutely. They kind of had to. Every species has their own physiology, food sustenance that they have to have. Like me, I have to eat meat. I wish that, they had more Hanovian technology where nothing had to be killed to have the meat, because the DNA feedback's just absolutely atrocious. But some people have to have plants, different variants, nutrients.
Okay. Did you ever encounter any aliens that ate humans?
Absolutely. 100% absolutely. I've been eaten myself. Not that I eat human, it's more of I have been eaten by several entities, Dracos, Draconians. There's a couple insectoids out there that have no problem of eating humans as well. Some of the grays, gray body types, I should say. I just categorize them into a gray body type because they all have like almost the same structure, just with different variances.
Were any of these beings stationed with you on the Section 13 vessel?
No, usually it was more at like the Mars camps and either on the battlefield.
All right. And as far as the regeneration process, it takes place. So do you have any information on that? Like how would they say you just got eaten, how would they bring you back?
They can take what's left of you and throw you into a tank with various colored goo, and you start regenerating, and then they take your soul shard and shove you right back in.
Do you actually remember the process of them taking your soul and shoving you back into another clone body?
Multiple times. It is the most painful experience I've ever had, and I've been through a lot. So it literally, it feels kind of like you're going through a black hole and just your quanta is just being shredded. And then, of course, you're being forced into one point.
So the Dark Fleet does fight with them some. And there's one really nasty gray species that I've heard other people call them the Matria or something.
Mitra.
Mitra, like that. And I know that we clash with them in Darkfleet.
I know they have a taste for human flesh.
Yeah,
Do they have a base on the moon too?
I think possibly. They have one on Mercury.
Okay.
They might have one on the moon.
What about you, Apollymi? Have you witnessed any collaboration or sharing or joint ventures in the programs?
Dude, they just tell us what we're going and where we're going to for the Section 13 stuff. And you know, my other projects and stuff, yeah, we fight a lot of the people that we got hired by the day before. So there's a lot of fighting within the groups. It's ridiculous. On a emissary standpoint, though, a lot of it is them just fighting for resources, fighting for territory, fighting for just about anything that they could possibly get their hands on, you know, and some of it's a little dirty play, but it's kind of ridiculous for me, you know, in my standpoint.
Right. And since we're talking about ETs who like the taste of humans, you mentioned that you have been on a planet that had restaurants where they served human meat. And could you go just a little bit more into that?
Humans are just like anything else in the universe. They are not off the menu. I mean, even on this planet, they're not off the menu, which is weird.
So you had humans
Anyway.
going to restaurants?
Huh?
So you had humans cannibalizing in that restaurant?
I don't know if you can call it like super cannibalizing. I mean, everyone thinks like there's going to be the human parts in the back that just look weird. The stuff that was served was pretty much like ground beef. So like you wouldn't know it was human, you know, because it like came in the form of like, you know, steaks and stuff like that. So it wasn't like, you know, here's an arm, but yes, there was humans that were served in the restaurants. I mean, but humans aren't the only species either. That you can get just about, you know, if that restaurant is one that will serve other species, you can get other species too. It's
Right.
not just humans.